Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I'm here checking out Moose Life. It's an odd name for an odd game, but that's Jeff Minter for you. This is the latest in his series of arcade eye killers. That's basically the best description I've got, because these games are designed to kill your eyes. And that's generally what this one does, that's for sure. Maybe a bit much, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. If I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, that is. I've only played 20 minutes of this, and I don't want to play any more of it. Because I just don't think it's that satisfying of a game to play, but let's go over the main mechanics. You control the moose, and for whatever reason, in order to move through the stage, it doesn't happen automatically, a la any other arcade game along this line ever. Instead, you do it by holding forward and back on the left analog stick to accelerate and brake. And for the most part, this seems like an alright idea, until you actually get into the game and realize that the reason why they put the brake in is so that you can slow the fuck down whenever the game is absolutely filled with ridiculous effects and you can't see stuff which might potentially kill you. This is frustrating to me on a lot of levels. I've always had trouble with spotting like the stuff that you really need to see in the middle of really bright shit, and Jeff Minter was usually alright about making this stuff at least visible, if not particularly easy to see, but I think Moose Life just goes too far with it, and the fact that they put in a brake button to help with this just kinda adds to that problem. I will also point out that you can use the brake in order to slow down, reverse, and collect collectibles that you missed. That is a reasonable use for it, so it's not the only reason that the brake key is that the brake is there. There is also the fact that you could slow down and try and get in front of an enemy again that you've missed, but they also tend to loop back around in front of you anyway, so it's not like it really matters. The main problem I really have with the fact that you can brake and accelerate, though, is that it just feels weird. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, whenever you're in control of the backwards and forwards movement in this game, and you're using it, it feels weird because the only thing that really seems to move in a way that you would expect to happen is the lines at the top of the bottom of the screen. They are kind of a sort of speed indicator going on, but everything else, whether it be the sheeps, the bullets, the enemies, they don't move in natural ways, and sometimes they feel really disconnected from each other in the way that they all move. So speeding up and slowing down doesn't feel inherently satisfying, and it doesn't feel precise either. Like, one of the favorite things I liked about Tempest, that is to say TXK, is that moving along the left and right, like the little grid lines that you had that would restrict you all the time, the good thing about moving left and right along those is that it felt inherently satisfying to do it because it felt precise and it felt like you were in control. Moose Life feels a bit more loose about it, if you pardon the wordplay. It's not slow, it's not sluggish, it's not lethargic, it's not really bad movement, it's just unsatisfying movement, especially in comparison to something like my other favorite game from Jeff Minter, which is Polybius, because that game's movement, that game's presentation, everything about it just feels amazing. And when you come to this game, and everything just feels kind of loose and floaty and not really bad to use, but just generally like not great, generally unpleasant. It makes like one of the base building blocks of the game feel unpleasant, and that's not great. Because for these sorts of games, you want absolutely everything to feel fantastic all the time, because if it doesn't, well, you're kind of screwed. Because if you want people to continuously hammer away at your game to get high scores, well, it's just not going to happen if the movement isn't that satisfying. You do also get a button that lets you flip up and down, and you'll flip onto the roof and you can shoot enemies on the roof, you can flip onto the floor, you can shoot enemies on the floor. However, this just kind of adds to the visual clusterfuck that's going on, because sometimes it's kind of hard to tell what's on the roof and what's not. Sometimes enemies will just drop from the top to the bottom floor, and pills especially can be really difficult if they're off in the distance. It can be kind of frustrating to deal with that, and the fact that you have to be constantly moving back and forth between these surfaces in later levels, because attacks can come at you from both the top and the bottom, and you need to be watching both surfaces at the same time to make sure you're not about to flip directly into an enemy bullet. It's not too bad in these early levels, but once you get over level 10, man, it gets really frustrating to deal with. The game does offer you plenty of power-ups to work with, though, such as the ability to change your shot types, the ability to have giraffes surrounding you, a ability to stomp, which will, when you go back down to the other floor, it will send out like a shockwave of bullets, and just a few other like random things, because you know it's Jeff Minter, they're usually all based around animals. But honestly, it seems random, and that's my major problem with that system, because you never know exactly what you can get, and you think to yourself, oh, I could really use like a stomp power-up right now, I could really use like some mutant camels to guard me, I could really use a shockwave, but no, the pills that come down just seem to be randomly selected to the point where you'll get like 5 pills of the same kind in one go, and it'll drive you insane. You can combine pills, so you can have like spread shooting, infinite shooting, and the stomp at the same time to make you an absolute killing lord of meese? Yeah, meese. I was gonna say mooses, but it's definitely not mooses. But that barely happens, and all too often you'll just get stuck with the same pill 3 or 4 times over, and it's not great, especially when shooting is not massively satisfying to play with. It's just, it comes out endlessly, it's kind of hard to aim, there's a steerable shots power-up, which is fucking useless, and it's just loose. It's the same problem with the movement, it's loose. The moose is loose, and it's not great. This game might call it great, but it's not as great as I would hope. I tried playing this game in VR, and it was a nightmare. The controls didn't work properly for one. I admit I was playing through Oculus Link, which plays like an Oculus Rift S, but there might be like trouble here and there. But for one thing, I couldn't figure out the button that you would use to swap surfaces, so I was thinking to myself that I was constantly stuck on the ground the entire time, which is absolutely not true. And the controls, you can't choose what analog stick you want to use. So you can't use the left stick to move, you can only use the right stick, as in the right hand controller, and you can only use like the right hand trigger to shoot. And I found that really uncomfortable. I'm much more used to the left. When you're playing this game on controller, it puts you on the left. So I don't know why it decides to select the right side. But yeah, it's just the VR implementation, at least via Oculus Link, is kind of broken. I will also point out that when you're playing in VR, everything has depth, don't get me wrong. But the first time one of the enemies just decides to zoom in the top plane over your field of vision and completely block you in terms of your vision so that you can't see for half a second, it's not pleasant, and it just makes you go back to the original, the on-screen version, in comparison to Polybius, which was the absolute best implementation of VR for this kind of game that I've seen in a long-ass time. There's a few that have tried it. There's games like Shooty Skies Overdrive. There's a few other minor ones that came out on like itch.io on VR, but yeah, Polybius just did it better. This game does not do it very well at all. The only real advantage to playing this game in VR is that you can turn around and see an absolutely gigantic moose behind you, but that's it. There's no way to see that in regular gameplay otherwise, and it really is better to just play this game on a regular old monitor, especially if you're like me and you've got a 240Hz monitor, because it just makes the game much more smoother than it has any right to be. Although I don't think it's actually running internally at 240 frames, but it still looks nice. It's still easier to play and easier on the eyes when you're playing it on a regular old-fashioned monitor. Especially since enemies can't fly in front of you and completely obscure your vision from time to time. Although it's still got good depth perception. I will admit that Jeff has been actually adding VR support to every game he's been putting out on PC recently. He's put out like 4 games that have had VR support. He also finally got around to patching Polybius to have support for more than the Oculus headsets, but considering that my main headset is now an Oculus Quest, that doesn't really matter to me anymore. But at the same time, I still agree, it's kind of bad to not have support for more than one virtual reality set, although at the time, I was told that he just didn't have the money to buy another headset, which I can completely believe. And I will not argue, considering how low budget his efforts usually are, I can believe that wholeheartedly. It's not something that comes out of a sense of malice, as far as I can tell, anyway. Especially since he was developing Polybius on PSVR at the same time, so it's like, well, he's probably going to have a bit of a problem supporting that many headsets at once when he's on as low a budget as he is, so that's a thing. The game itself does have all the usual tricks that the arcade games from Jeff Minter have. You can start from any level that you managed to get to with the same score and lives that you had when you got to that point, which is good. You've also got the pure mode, which means you start from level 1, 3 lives, and you just got to go for it. You've also got a free flight mode, although I don't really know what the deal is with that one. It just seems to be the same game. But yeah, I'm not really satisfied, if I'm being honest with you. It's just a bit too loose, a bit too imprecise, way too much crap on screen at once, to the point where you have to actively slow down. The controls are just unsatisfying in general, and yeah, I mean, it's got the Jeff Minter thing about liking really weird animals and saying weird shit and having some cool electronic music going on in the background, but the theme was never what I played these games for. It was the gameplay, and this just doesn't do it for me. Sorry, Jeff, I'm going to refund this one, but considering that you've added improved VR support to Polybius, I'm just going to go buy that again. He's only charging $10 Australian for it, which is honestly ridiculous for how good that game is. I'll see you all next time.